And welcome back, everybody, to episode 215. I think we're at 215. I think I got that one right. I have to take a look. Regardless, welcome back to Two Goalies, One Mic, brought to you by Fatty Beer Company, Western New York's premier market and tap room with over 300 beers to choose from at 7 different Western New York locations. If you need a beer, always please make sure you make it a Fatty beer. Let them know Two Goalies, One Mic sent you. Also, please make sure you check out Impulse Physical Therapy of Western New York at 5087 Broadway, Suite 100 in Depew, New York. 5-star facilities, 5-star staff. Alex, one of the owners and co-founders, he's actually helping me rehab to get me back on the ice right now. I have my next appointment I think is Monday. So I'm super excited to, for this journey that he's going to take me on. And like, I've been in their facilities. Again, I can't express it enough. If you hurt yourself at work, if you've hurt yourself, on the ice, on the field, wherever it might be, Impulse Physical Therapy is absolutely the place to go. And again, I can't speak highly enough about them. Again, just check them out again at 5087 Broadway, Suite 100 in Depew. And as always, Extreme Discount Mattress with Western New York's finest selection of mattresses and adjustable beds featuring the cool gel memory foam, 2-sided mattresses, Tailor Latex, organic mattresses, Chatham & Wells, Scott Living, and even the Skechers mattress, all for a third to one-half the supposed sale prices anywhere. Stop into any of their 7 locations across Western New York or check out their website, extrememattress.com, extreme with an X. If you're looking for even more savings, check out their closeout center at 1625 Walden Avenue in Cheektowaga with up to 80% off the already low prices. Save a fortune on one-of-a-kinds, closeouts, and floor samples. You can get a quality mattress for literally pennies on the dollar. Extreme Discount Mattress. We sell mattresses for less, a lot less. And remember, if you mention that you are a fan of Two Goalies, One Mic, you get a free mattress protector with purchase of any mattress at Extreme Discount Mattress. So Hurls, it's been a minute. I know you had your trip back to. Have you been on again since you got back to Buffalo?
At least once, yeah. Okay,
you did. Okay, all right. So obviously a huge day in Saberland. Let's honestly a huge week. Going back to, and we haven't, me and you personally, we haven't been on alive to talk about the firing of Kevyn Adams, and obviously something that was long overdue. But I'll leave it off there with you because I got into it a little bit last night, and I'll get into it more today. But your initial thoughts on the firing, and kind of what we all suspected from the beginning. I think maybe we thought there would be some maybe Kevyn would transition into a different role when the hire was first made, because we all assumed that Kevyn was the one making the hiring, and we just maybe thought that it would be to hire his replacement. But regardless, this is the way it panned out. So your initial thoughts on Kevyn being fired and Jarmo stepping in as the, I think, 5th general manager under the Pegula era?
Whew, boy. And I guess that would be 15 years. Yeah, it was time. It was probably time long before, I guess it was yesterday, which would be Monday, that it actually happened. I think the 3-game losing streak to start the road trip was probably the final straw. I think we all said before the season that if they weren't in a playoff spot or competing for a playoff spot by Thanksgiving, that it would likely be Jarmo's role to take over, which is right around that time frame. So I think being 500 about 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, 2 weeks before Christmas, I think this all kind of lines up with what we thought. I don't think anybody envisioned the amount of injury bad luck that the team has had to overcome to begin the year, and all, not even just injury luck, just strange happenstance when it comes to a lot of these things, including missing your captain and best player for 8 to 10 games in Dahlin in the situation he was facing. That's obviously far out of Kevyn's control. But yeah, I think I said it yesterday that given that Kevyn didn't have much experience coming in, and he was kind of a layup hire to begin COVID from Terry Pegula, I don't necessarily think he did the worst job in the world. He just never really should have been GM in the first place. He was kind of gifted the job. And I do think that he somewhat made the best of a bad situation. He made some pretty good trades. I think he improved the roster in that area specifically about as much as he could have. Obviously, you can go back and look at a few draft picks and a few guys that have panned out differently, but at the end of the day, the roster wasn't good enough, and he didn't do enough to make this team competitive on a night-to-night basis. And I think he would probably say as quickly as anybody that it's a win or lose business, and the results weren't there, so therefore somebody had to go. So it's not surprising at all that he was fired, but I do think it's worthy to at least look back on and be like, hey, like, of course he needed to be gone, but the job that he did, I don't believe was the worst thing in the world.
So, like, and I agree. I think I kind of touched on this too. I may have last night. I can't remember. Like, my reaction video, and like, obviously, I kind of will talk a little bit more about today. Won't get too deep into it because I talked a lot about last night. The whole, and you're aware of like the whistleblower story, and how up until maybe 2 days ago, I felt like it wasn't true until some ominous details came out about Kevyn Adams' contract that apparently nobody, not even Matthew Fairburn, even knew back when it was signed in 2022. But again, we'll get back into that. But there are plenty of feathers that in Kevyn Adams' cap as GM. There are, no doubt about it. You can point to the McLeod trade. As of right now, Sabres won that one big. I mean, again, we all know the narrative, what Matt Larkin, whatever it is online. I never really got too involved with that one. But I think Buffalo did pretty well there. Kevyn has did pretty well there. He did pretty well on the JJ Peterka return. Josh Doan instantly turned into a fan favorite from like game number 1. Kesselring, we totally expect when he's back and healthy to be a top 4 defenseman. The Tage Thompson contract, buying in on him early, that was a great move by Kevyn. And, right now he's playing on, my opinion, the best contract in hockey. He's a 2-time 40-goal scorer. I believe, does he have 90 points twice, or was it just once?
I think just once.
Okay. I think the second time it was pretty close though. But to have that guy at like $7.3 million a season, like, that is a steal. Like, I think back to the original Nathan McKinnon contract that he first signed, and how great of a contract that was for Colorado. I mean, now this season, the Matthias Samuelsson contract is looking much more stomachable, right? Because he has looked healthy and it is a night and day different defenseman than what he was.
I'd argue if he stays healthy and continues to play like this, that will be one of the best contracts in.
Yeah. Possibly. Like, very much so.
He's been, all things considered, the best defenseman on the team this season.
No doubt. But then you have other moves that he made that weren't all that great. I guess the Dylan Cousins trade still to be determined, right? Like, Josh Norris could definitely turn out to be a very capable player that contributes to this lineup for years to come. But he's at a high price tag, and he has already dealt with, was it 2 or 3 injuries so far since becoming a Sabre? And has he played 30 games yet? No. So it's like, already you're hearing that narrative coming in, and you saw, the Sabres embedded where he, no reservations. The medical staff cleared him. And then he was injured like 2 games into his career, and then injured in game 1 of this season. So like, there are
8 points in 6 games this year, though.
No, he's been great. He has been great. But I don't think I'm not challenging his ability as a player. I'm just challenging his ability to stay on the ice.
Same conversation as Samuelsson. I think,
yes.
If he's available, it looks really good. But that was a huge part of that conversation, and also the second round draft pick that was thrown into that trade.
For what reason, we don't know still.
And not retaining Bernard Docker as well. So yeah, I mean, that's all part of it, without a doubt.
I remember like the Twitter wars that were going on with our buddy Mike Harrington, and fans that were flipping out on Bernard Docker. But it's like, then the season started and you were so low on right-handed defense. Like, well, we had one we could have had for $800,000 a season that we just let walk. It was part of a Dylan Cousins trade, and I don't know. Like, yeah, he's with Detroit now, I think, right? Is he with Detroit?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think he's playing pretty well there. At least last time I checked. But yeah, there's a lot of criticisms you can look back on. We don't have to list the whole thing, but at the end of the day, it was deserved. It was. There's no debating that, and we know the reason why Kevyn was hired. And I will say this: like, he took it on the chin a lot over this past 5.5 seasons for Terry Pegula. Terry never had a one step in front of a microphone because Kevyn Adams was there to take the beating for him. He was his shield, and he did everything that was asked of him. And I would like to see a world. I mean, I'm not a Kevyn Adams fan, not really, just based off his work as a GM, but also things I've heard about him now over the past week away from the ice, predating his job as a GM. In my times of meeting him, I never had an issue with the guy. He's always seemed like a nice guy to me, but certain things I've started to hear from pretty reliable people, like, kind of changed my tune on the guy a little bit. But, could he have been a better GM under a different owner where he was given more ability and more control over the roster and the salary cap? And clearly, and Jarmo even brought it up in his presser, like, is he going to have full control over the hockey department, roster decisions, and salary cap? Because we know Kevyn wasn't given that. No way. You can't convince me otherwise, right? Like, so I would like to see a world, maybe if Kevyn does get another chance, how does he do with a different owner?
Yeah, I think he will get another chance in some type of hockey operations department around the league. I think he proved himself enough with some of the trades, with some of his drafting, that I think, and he's of course got connections throughout the NHL, given how long he played in the league and the people that he knows and whatnot. So yeah, I won't be surprised, but that doesn't matter at this point. I think moving forward, Jarmo is clearly someone who has experience in every single level of a hockey operations department, and it's refreshing to have a general manager of a hockey team that actually has experience prior to running the Sabres. Jarmo is as qualified as they come in terms of actually doing things relative to running an NHL team. Actionable experience when it comes to this exact role, and he's already done it, and he has the qualifications. So I think we can sleep soundly, at least knowing that, and then use that as the foundation to judge him moving forward. Because at this point, it's not tearing it all down, especially with the team still in contention, 6 points out of a playoff spot. I think these next 5 games against all Eastern Conference teams in the next week and a half will really say a lot about where this team is going, just like these last 6 games did on the road trip. Obviously got off to a horrible start, but now they're on their first 3-game win streak of the season. So you've got 2 games at home here, and I think that will at least help determine what Jarmo does with this team. Namely, I would say the biggest point of contention or inflection, that being Alex Tuch, and whether, if they're able to re-sign him, obviously going to be tough midseason, or what type of return they'd be able to get in a trade.
Yeah, and that was something, and we put up a graphic on it earlier today, and I do want to touch on a lot of the Jarmo presser. But one thing, before we get to the Alex Tuch thing, like, one of the things he did tweet, or one of the things he did bring up is just like, if you're changes through consistency, culture, and consistency. Having a consistent message to the players and building trust. And I think Jarmo, just from everything we got from him, and again, we'll keep getting into more as the podcast goes on, but he is a no nonsense, no bullshit kind of guy. And I think in one of the first few statements after, thanking Kevyn for his time with the organization. And, I thought that was pretty cool, because I don't know if you ever normally see GMs do that, former GMs, thank the previous GM. Normally it's the owner, but I will say this, he went straight at, you were losing because of lack of effort, and you would lose against less skilled teams than you who were just working harder than you. And he said that was unacceptable. I fucking love that, Hurls. I love that. That's one of the first things he says right out of the gate. he questions the work ethic, something we as fans do constantly.
Yeah, especially against teams that they should beat, which we've seen many times this season, namely that Flames game, both Flames games actually in recent weeks. And then I think it was the St. Louis game prior to that. There have been nights where they just haven't shown up, but there are also nights where they've played really, really well and they deserve to win and they didn't get those wins. So I do think it's a two-way street, but having that type of stick-to-itiveness from the top of the organization all the way down through the hockey operations department into the coaching staff, permeating through the team, I think is obviously very important. You need that with any hockey team, whether that is a college team, a minor league team, a junior team, a beer league team. Like you need to be structured from the top down with what your message for your organization is. And I do think that he's been around enough, he's seen enough to know that he's not going to accept that moving forward. So yeah, I was encouraged not only by things that he addressed, but his attitude today, but the direct manner in which he handled a lot of the issues that we all talk about all the time. So yeah, no, I like this tone and I am encouraged, but at the end of the day, he also is not going to be playing out there and he's working with this roster at the moment. And these guys on this ice and on this roster are very much a part of what Kevyn Adams' vision for the team was. And I think at least for this season, whether they make the playoffs or not, it's not necessarily going to be up to Jarmo unless he does something significant in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I agree. And we'll talk about the Alex Tuch thing here too. Like that was, I forget who asked the question. I don't know if it was Fairburn or Mike.
I think it was Fairburn, at least from what I heard.
Was it Fairburn?
Yeah.
It seems like, I don't know, I felt an aura of confidence in his voice when talking about it. You know, he says, we want him, you know, I forget the exact quote, but, you know, he made it clear they want him, but it has to be a number that makes sense and is reasonable for both sides. And I feel like if there is a move that he makes first, it might be getting that guy under contract.
Yeah, either under contract if they can agree to a number and a term, or trading him. And if I had to say right now at this current juncture, I would say it's more likely they trade him because, as we've mentioned many times previously, it's Alex Tuch that has all the leverage at the moment, and he's the one that is going to demand a number that is probably higher than the Sabres want to go. As a 29-year-old winger, obviously there's the history, there's everything that Sabres fan want to keep in Alex Tuch. There's also certain things that would make it not very appealing to pay somebody of his ilk $10.5 to $11 million a year at his age. So there's pros and cons to every situation. And that's why I think it's a really, really tough conversation that they all, at some point, whether they like it or not, during the season, need to sit down and have, because you can't lose a guy like that for nothing.
Yeah, you can't. And I think he gets a haul, right? Like, given how good he is in all areas of the ice, one of the best penalty killers in the league, on a contender, a Selke candidate, no doubt. Multiple 30-goal scorer, I believe, had an 80-plus points season. I want to say, was it 80-plus points, or maybe he got to 79? I can't remember. I almost want to say he's had a season or two of being a point-per-game player. But regardless, you would get a hefty return for him. But my question to you is this, Hurls. Was the holdup maybe Alex just didn't want to deal with Kevyn Adams? Maybe he just didn't want to play for a team that had Kevyn Adams leading the ship? Could Jarmo's presence and Jarmo being in this position help bridge that relationship and lead to a long-term deal?
I think someone who's been in those types of negotiation situations will definitely provide a fresh perspective, but I don't think it's going to change Alex and his team's number. I don't think it's going to make him take less. I don't think it's going to make him do anything that he wouldn't have done from a tangible, logical sense any differently. Like, yeah, that might make him want to be around a little bit more, whatever, but like he's not going to take less money just because Jarmo's the GM now. There's no
no,
way.
no. I'm not saying take less money, but maybe the stand that like the point of contention was Alex just didn't want to play for a team that Kevyn Adams was the GM of.
I think there's a chance, but I think it's way more likely they just weren't close on the numbers. So hopefully they are able to get back to the table and have more productive conversations about what that looks like moving forward. Because at the end of the day, like that's the main factor in all of this. Like he wants to secure his future, his family's future, even though it already is. Like he has the opportunity, he has the leverage. So I think that is what it's going to take, and whether Jarmo and his team are comfortable with that or not is really what it's going to come down to. But it's either going to happen in the next few weeks, or depending on where this team is, either before the Olympics or right after, that's when it's going to happen, because you cannot let Alex Tuch go to market and then lose him for absolutely nothing. That would just be a really, really horrible way for the situation to end, specifically for the Sabres. Like you said, like, I don't necessarily think it's like a Jack Eichel type haul by any means, of course, because you got Alex Tuch, Peyton Krebs, and a first-round pick for Jack Eichel. But
that's a different situation, though.
Yeah, of course. But what I'm saying is, like, it's not this like insane haul, but you will get someone that can contribute to your hockey team today, tomorrow, and in the future by trading Tuch, and also probably a prospect and a pick.
Yeah, I mean, I think the return for Alex Tuch would be pretty significant, personally, for any contending team. Like, I don't know what, like, could you imagine Minnesota coming back and trading for Alex? Well, here's the thing. The flip side of all this is, if you're trading Alex Tuch, then what message are you sending to the rest of the roster? Like, that's a leader in your room. That's a guy that everybody loves, that everybody probably wants to keep around. What message are you sending to Dahlin? What message are you sending to Tage Thompson? You know, like, to me, that's we're gonna start rebuilding type of move, because you're not trading Alex Tuch for matching rostered players right now. Like, you're trading for futures.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on what happens here in the next few weeks, right? Like Jarmo said it like that. He firmly believes they can make the playoffs with this roster. And I think that speaks to not only the players on this team currently, but also the job that the front office has done for the past couple seasons, because it's directly related to that. But if they go on another stretch where they lose 7 of 10, or they get to a point where it's really looking like they won't make it, then maybe that is the sign that he needs to tear it down a little bit. I don't think he makes these decisions without consulting Dahlin and Tage, because they are the two most important members of the roster and they are signed long-term. And I think everybody, fans, front office included, wants them to be a part of the future. And if they're very passionate about Tuch staying, then maybe that changes his mind. But yeah, I think especially these next 5 games, you've got Philadelphia at home on Thursday, the Islanders at home on Saturday, and then at New Jersey, at Ottawa, and at home versus Boston within the next week and a half. 5 games against contending opponents, not only in your division, but also in the wild card spot. How this team looks after those 5 games is vitally important to this conversation.
I agree. And I believe this was the first time they won 3 games in a row on the season. It took longer than I think a lot of us would have liked. First time they won in regulation on the road, I think, since April Fool's last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
correct?
it was April 2nd, I think. Yeah, so 2 games in a row on the road in regulation. And I think, like, to begin that road trip, it felt eerily similar to the December collapse of last season, which ultimately sunk the season. That 13 game winless streak, or however long it was. And there was a very, very clear opportunity for that to happen again. But credit where credit is due. And I think Alex Lyon has a lot to thank for this, but they were able to turn it around, win that game at Edmonton, despite a lot of adversity. Alex Tuch,
Lyon played fantastic too.
Speak of the devil, was able to get the game winner in overtime. And then they played 2 tough, hard-fought games. Obviously, Vancouver at that point was the worst team in the league, and of course they traded their best player. But winning on the road in the NHL it shouldn't be as hard as it's been for this team, but it's still not the easiest thing in the world. And then going into Seattle to get a win it's not the biggest accomplishment given relative to where both of those teams are in the standings, but those are big wins, especially where this team was. And we said it before the road trip. I think the minimum benchmark of what we wanted for this team to still be at least in the conversation was 500 on the road trip, getting back to 14-4 or whatever combination. And they were able to get 6 points in one way or another. So they're still in the conversation, but they could quickly be out of it if they don't produce in the next 5 games.
Yeah. Also, he did touch on the goalie situation, the 3-headed. First off, is Colton Ellis on IR and something like that? Because I thought he might have mentioned that he's out injured. I know it was a concussion.
I think I saw he was on injured reserve, but injured reserve in hockey is different than.
Yeah, it's very different than other sports. So he could be back in the lineup as early as maybe third. I mean, it's what is it? How many games is there? Is it days? It's supposed to be a week. It's retroactive to the injury itself.
Probably, yeah. Based on injured reserve on December 11th, he'll be eligible to return after December 18th.
So pretty soon.
Which is
you're going to
December
be dealing
18th is the game on Thursday. Yeah.
So you're going to be dealing with this 3-headed monster in net. And Jarmo even said during the press conference, he thinks he's gotten good enough goaltending throughout the season for them to win games. I mean, I digress to a certain extent, and that comes to all 3 goalies. I'm not just singling out UPL. I think all 3 goalies could have been better in certain games where you needed a save and you didn't get it. But to his point, yes, you needed to be better. There were games where you could solely point to work ethic as the reason why you lost. But I do want to say this, and given the Finnish connection, when you kind of wondered, how would this whole situation with Jarmo play out, so to speak? You know what I mean? How would would there be? I'm assuming that Jarmo maybe has scouted UPL in the past. Given again, he grew up playing in Finland. He's from Finland. And he came and played in the OHL, really showed out in junior. I mean, I'm not sure as a GM with Columbus if he had a chance to, scout or see UPL play at all. But, I did find it very interesting when talking about goalies. He did not even bring up UPL. He talked about Colton Ellis. I don't think he mentioned Lion directly, but I found it interesting that he didn't bring up Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen at all, and he did allude that this 3-headed monster will get down to 2 under his watch, and I have to imagine, could UPL be the odd man out?
Potentially, but I do think it's going to be based on performance. I really do. And I think it's gonna be a game by game thing. I think that he can't think about. There's still not necessarily a huge sample size when it comes to Colton Ellis, so that makes it a little bit tougher. Obviously, that was a Kevyn Adams waiver wire pickup. I'm not sure how much, if at all, Jarmo advised. Obviously, he was with the team when they made that waiver wire selection, so. Maybe he was, and he saw the same amount of potential that the rest of the operations department did. But yeah, it's tricky because Ellis, obviously, I guess he has a higher ceiling than UPL at this point, given that the sample size isn't as large, and we haven't seen the consistency over a large period of time from UPL. But I do think that given that experience, it makes it a little bit tougher to make UPL the odd man out, and that also factors into it also being a pretty hard trade, right? The contract's difficult. Teams are goalie needy, but at the same time, they're not goalie needy for a guy on a relatively large contract who hasn't necessarily shown the consistency throughout his career. So that makes it difficult. And if I had you put a gun to my head right now, I think it is going to be Ellis who's the odd man out. That's just my guess. I don't necessarily think that Kekäläinen and Luukkonen both being Finnish is the reason for that.
No.
That's what I think.
It's a layer to it that you can maybe speak to.
For sure. But I do believe that is what's going to happen, and hopefully Lion gets the lion's share of games moving forward. I think the best this team has been in the beginning of the season was when he was playing at his best, and also obviously past few games when he's gotten back in there. But even you look at the goalie performance overall in totality throughout the season, and expected goals against, they're 20th in the league, and actual goals against, they're 28th. They're ranked 27th from a goaltending perspective. These are all via JFresh on Twitter, but that's not good enough. I mean, and this is a conversation as well. They're third in expected goals for, and they're ninth in goals for. So they are not getting the higher end of both finishing and goaltending. And that is the main reason, aside from the power play, that they are 14-4, 500, and still last place. And technically not last place in the East anymore. I saw that today, that they are, I think it is, they have the tiebreaker with the Blue Jackets, Jarmo's former team at the moment. They do. Yeah. In 32 games, both the Blue Jackets and the Sabres have 32 points, and the Sabres have whatever the tiebreaker is. I think it's regulation wins. So not in last anymore. Put up the banner. But yeah,
hang the banner.
Finishing, goaltending, and power play are the three main reasons the Sabres are in that spot in the moment. And if any of those three, I would say probably finishing and goaltending, because power play is important, but not as important as those other two. If either of those get marginally better, the 5-on-5 percentage, everything else about this team, all the numbers are pretty good. If those get marginally better, I think we're going to start to see tangible movement up the standings from this team.
Yeah, and I agree with this comment. Was it me, or when he talked about Ellis, it sounded like he may have been the one that wanted the waiver claim? I mean, I tend to agree with that, because again, I know you said you watched most of it, but I felt like he made a point of it to talk about Ellis. And that being said, I think you might be right with what you said earlier. Not really sure who was calling the shots on certain transactions, but I think Jarmo was the guy who maybe made the call to pick up Colton Ellis off waivers.
I'd be hard pressed to think he wasn't at least asked about it.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Another move that was made, or that was reported that was nearly made, was prior, obviously, to the announcement of Kevyn Adams firing. Did you see the little report about what Buffalo apparently was willing to offer Vancouver, or at least as a centerpiece?
I saw earlier today, it was Benson and Byram.
Yeah, were the centerpiece of the trade. And I guess Vancouver is very, very, very was very high. I know they took Willander, the defenseman, in that draft, but they've always been very high on Zach Benson. I'm sure they got a lot of opportunities to.
I mean, how could you not be?
You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, granted, yeah, the goals aren't coming this season, but the talent is undeniable when he's been healthy. So that was interesting. It's like one last swing at the fences from. Well, do you buy what Jarmo said, that he had no idea what the offer was being made? Because I personally have reason to believe, via a source that both me and that Kevyn Adams was no longer calling the shots on that road trip, possibly as early as the Calgary game. You think back to Lindy's reaction when Austin was sent down. I do have reason to believe 100% that post Calgary is potentially when Kevyn Adams was no longer making roster decisions. So I don't know if I fully buy into Jarmo saying, "Oh, I had no idea about the Quinn Hughes offer, or what we apparently offer." I think he was kind of more posturing there, but I do find that very interesting, that regardless of whoever it was, Kevyn Adams is the last swing of the fences to hopefully keep his job, or if it was in fact Jarmo Kekäläinen, making that offer, that Benson would be the centerpiece of that deal. I mean, I'm not surprised, because Quinn Hughes is a Norris winning defenseman. But your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm surprised it wasn't more, to be honest. That
yep.
Byram was.
Well, I think those were just there are probably picks included.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, but I'm saying is that like I'm surprised they'd be interested in Byram. Yeah, I mean, I think when a guy like that is available, you start to throw convention to the wind a little bit, and you start to think about things that you hadn't previously because he's such a unique talent. And even if you have Rasmus Dahlin, who's a similar type of player to Quinn Hughes, if you have both of them, then you have something no one in the NHL has. So, I'm interested to know how true that is. But at the same time, I would have. I mean, I would have been upset to lose Zach Benson, but I would have been really happy to get Quinn Hughes. I think what Vancouver ultimately got was probably the smarter deal for them. I'm super, super high on Zeev Buium. When I initially saw that the trade came down, my first reaction was like, it has to be Buium because there's no way that Vancouver would have done that deal otherwise. He's a Quinn Hughes type of player, at least from an offensive perspective. And of course, he's super young and will get better defensively. But yeah, I think they got about as much as they could. Of course, there's the rumors about New Jersey and playing with his brothers. And there was Simon.
If he walks to free agency, that might be where he's going.
Yeah, potentially. And that would be catastrophic for the Wild, giving all that up and not being able to re-sign him.
Here's the thing. That was
say they win a cup, then it doesn't matter.
If you think back to when Jarmo sat on, I'm not going to say the word sit on his hands, but like at that trade deadline when he knew he had Bobrovsky and Panarin, they weren't going to re-sign, and their team was looking good as a contender for the Stanley Cup that year. He made other deals. I forget who he brought in at the deadline. I can't remember the names. Maybe somebody in the peanut gallery can let us know. But, he didn't trade two of his biggest assets at the trade deadline and took a huge, huge risk. That's almost like kind of like what the Wild are doing right now, giving up all of those assets for Quinn Hughes. They're taking a huge swinging for the fences right now, hoping that Kirill, the Thrill, Hughes and company can lead Minnesota to a Stanley Cup.
Kind of off topic, but back to what we were speaking of. It is relevant. A guy I follow on Twitter, he's a Jerry Sullivan parody account, but he talks about the Sabres.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, by Jerry Sullivan. He says, sign Tuch to 3 times 12.5. Forget about the term of it. Just fully and completely overpay until he can't say no. You can't afford to lose him. If it goes well, he will be happy to finish out his career here. If it goes poorly, then he's a rental candidate in 2.5 short years. If he was down for that, I don't think that's the worst idea in the world. Kind of an abridged bridge type deal that is front loaded, that pays him for what he's accomplished recently and what he will in the next few years, while also giving you a potential out. I just don't know if he, as both a hockey player and a human, will think that's the smartest thing to do at this point in his career. But that amount of money in these next 3 years, which are the end of his prime, he's not going to get that anywhere else. So yeah, I kind of like that idea, and I'm wondering if that's something they're going to at least pitch to him.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. There were some other comments. He was asked multiple times about the coaching situation, about, I think Harrington might have asked about a president of hockey operations, because there are some rumors, like, and again, we have our own sources here at Two Goalies, one guy that's really, really plugged in. And I will admit that, we sat on it, you saw in the chat, we sat on information that we got as early as 6 a.m. on Thursday, that Kevyn Adams was getting fired. I personally didn't feel like comfortable going public with it, because you never know. You've seen it in what we do as podcasters. When you're wrong, you're thrown on the coals, you're nailed to the cross, everything. So we kind of sat on that, and then it ended up being true. Even though I know for a fact that our source is extremely plugged in. The same source did mention from their same source that there are changes coming to the coaching staff. He didn't say Lindy's getting fired, but potential front office role. Your thoughts on that? Because when Jarmo was asked directly about that twice, once on the future of the coaching staff and once on president of hockey operations, he said the same exact thing. We're evaluating. We are evaluating. And in the past, the president of hockey operations was always a hard no. Hard no, it's never happening. You know, we heard the Shanahan story. I'm the president of hockey operations. Your thoughts on that? Because again, the same people who gave us that information as early as Thursday morning is the same person who is saying this now. And I mean, I have no reason to not believe them after they were right the first time. So if that were to in fact happen and Lindy Ruff were to become the next president of hockey operations, how would you feel about that?
I think it could be an indirect way of finally getting what we've all been asking for years, which is a president of hockey operations. It's someone that clearly Terry has a good relationship with and that he trusts, and that someone who's obviously been around the organization in the league for a long time and knows a lot about what goes on, that I think it's kind of tricking Terry into being like, oh yeah, it's not like what everybody's been saying, but at the same time, we're taking this over and it's our ship and you're not involved anymore. I do believe that it is potentially a way around what Harrington has been telling us for years, that Terry has felt that he's the president of hockey operations. I think this is potentially a good way to get around that and a good way to do it. Biz actually said the same thing on Chicklets today, that he heard the same person that told him that Adams was getting fired told him that these exact things, that Lindy is going to be the president of hockey ops and that someone else is going to be head coach. Wouldn't say his name. I think we can say it. Likely going to be Seth Appert. I think that is probably what would happen, just given his proximity to the system and the team for however long, and even these prospects and a lot of guys who have come up through Rochester recently. That's probably what would happen. Obviously, not everyone would be super happy with that, but mid-season, that might be the interim option. So, yeah, I don't know. I can reserve my thoughts on that while speaking separately about Lindy in the front office. I would like it. I think that would be, it's not Brendan Shanahan, but I think it's accomplishing what we've all wanted in a way that makes sense for this current regime and current structure.
Yep. And to piggyback off of that, and again, sources, hashtag sources, he didn't back off of the president of hockey operations title, but when I pressed them even further, he goes, this is his exact words. Yeah, he's not getting fired. He's moving into a front office role. So what could that possibly mean? But to your point earlier, and Seth Appert was the name used as possibly being the next head coach. Now, here's my thoughts on Appert. First off, I'm not, and also from this source, they're not totally convinced they won't bring somebody else in to be the coach. Again, that is something that he backed off on a little bit. Because there are a lot of good names out there. You know, you hear DeBoer thrown out there a lot. Is Gallant coaching anywhere right now?
I don't think so. Let me see.
Yeah, DeBoer, who I did believe DeBoer's coaching Team USA right now, I want to say, correct? You have Gallant. Tortorella is out there. I know Bucci was teasing that out there. You know, like
head coach of the Shanghai Dragons.
Oh yeah, that's right. He did go overseas.
KHL.
Oh. Who was the coach that was that DeBoer or Gallant that fucked Ottinger in the playoffs? That fucked over Ottinger.
DeBoer.
That was DeBoer. And DeBoer was the same guy who fucked over Fleury. And we want that guy to come in and run our goalie situation. That sounds wonderful. But then there's that, who is it, Carlisle, the popular college coach?
David Carl.
Sorry,
the University of Denver head coach.
That's right. Yeah,
everyone the last two U.S. Winning World Junior teams. Not the coach this year, though.
It is kind of surprising he hasn't made his way into the NHL yet, to say the least. again, I don't know a ton about him. I know I see what I see online, and kind of what you've told me about him, and I bow to you and what you think, but maybe I can see why it would be Appert, possibly even just in the meantime, because again, he has history with some of these players in Rochester. He is a younger coach with maybe a fresher message. Obviously, we know he can't run a power play. That's for sure. But I mean, maybe there is mixed messages in coaching between Lindy and his old style, or maybe his style compared to what Appert wants to. I don't know, but I think that would be the right move, as bringing, unless the players just don't like him, I don't know, but bringing in a coach that there is a familiarity with, rather than just bringing in a new face, a new scheme, a new everything, and hoping that works. And it has worked in the past, no doubt. There is plenty of evidence, just over even the past couple of years, when you make a midseason fire and hire or transition move, or however you want to say it, that this could work in the Sabres' favor. Just a fresh message. But I mean, could Appert be the next head coach of the Buffalo Sabres? I think that is a very much a possibility, given the other names that might be available out there. I don't think they'd bring up Leone from Rochester.
I think a lot of people would prefer that. But I think people are saying that at the moment just because of the frustration with the power play and the lack of results with Appert at the NHL level. So hard to say whether Leone would be much better. But yeah, I think a lot of people have spoken to what he's done with Rochester and his attitude, and even those comments about Levi. And I think I personally, from what I've heard, I like what I've heard a little bit better, but yeah, that probably wouldn't happen. But yeah, I don't know. Hard to say. It does seem like there is smoke surrounding all of it. And I wouldn't be surprised if by, what is it, next Saturday, that game against the Bruins, that home game, that there would not potentially be, well, obviously these 5 games really matter against all Eastern Conference opponents, but wouldn't be surprised if there is a change by then.
Yeah, I mean, you have the roster freeze coming up with the Olympics. I imagine that these moves that you're going to make, whether it is from again, what we've been hearing, what sources have been telling us, that again, either a front office role or a president of hockey operations role, potentially in line for Lindy Ruff. And then obviously Seth Appert moving to head coach, but you have to imagine these decisions will be made by that roster freeze.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think that's probably safe to say.
Okay. Few other topics before we, any final thought? Obviously, the last thing I want to get to is a story that we've been sitting on now for like 2 or 3 months. That it's about the front office / Kevyn, and it's not groundbreaking. Steve Dangle brought it up on his podcast, for those who listen to the Steve Dangle podcast, and it's a nothing burger. Would you agree, Hurls?
I mean,
it's funny.
It's a burger, but
it's a burger, but it's funny. Yeah. And it's very on brand for the Sabres.
Yeah.
And would have been embarrassing for it to get out, but it's going to get out now. So it's something that we've been sitting on. But before we do, I do want to kick it back to our sponsors at Fatty Beer Company, Western New York's premier market and tap room, with over 300 beers to choose from at 7 different Western New York locations. If you need a beer, make it a Fatty Beer. Get to Fatty Beer. Let them know 2 Goalies, 1 Mike send you. And of course, Impulse Physical Therapy of Western New York. It's time to ditch the physical therapy clinics that treat you just like another number and step into a world where you are the center of your care. Impulse is owned by Buffalo's only board-certified sports physical therapist. We work one-on-one using science-backed technology like 3D motion analysis and force plates to help you exceed your goals and become the healthiest, strongest version of yourself. So come experience the Impulse difference today and mention this for a discounted $77 assessment on your next visit. Again, at 5087 Broadway, Suite 100 in Depew, New York. And as always, extreme discount mattress.
We know with Skechers, your day starts with the comfort and support you need for your feet. And now that same innovation has made its way to the bedroom. Introducing the Skechers Sleep System. with cooling SketchKnit fabric, pressure-relieving Skechers Max cushioning, and our Skechers Posture Fit support system. Your day ends just like it began with Skechers comfort that never stops. Skechers mattresses, exclusively at Extreme Discount Mattress, the lowest prices in the nation.
And again, thank you for shout out again to our sponsors at Fatty Beer Company. You can find them at Fatty Beer on Instagram and Twitter, fattybeer.com. Extreme Discount Mattress at extreme_mattress on Twitter, extrememattress.com. And of course, Impulse Physical Therapy of Western New York. And we're going to get into this here, Hurls. You know the story. I know the story. There are a very select few. I mean, there are people up with TSN like Chris Johnston and Steve Dangle in the story. And I've always appreciated the professionalism on their end for, I mean, again, it wasn't, like Steve said, it wasn't his story to tell, but it definitely could have gotten leaked out. There were other people locally that knew about this that, we got into it, but I'm going to, let me see here. I'm going to bring up everything. And again, I'm saying this is a Kevyn Adams story because I just feel like I don't know who else it could have been. But I'm not going to sit here and say for sure that this is in fact Kevyn Adams. But to start at the beginning, I have a friend who is a big time thrifter. This guy, my buddy Frank Zadzinski, has one of the coolest basements. You just think of every dream of yours as a 90s kid, whatever video games you played, figurines you collected, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Batman, every superhero, video games, wrestling figures. He has it all in this basement. It is literally a 90s kid's dream in there. And he thrifts a lot for this stuff. I wouldn't even go as far as he's almost a professional thrifter in his downtime. He did come across a couple Sabres full zip jackets at a Goodwill in Depew. I'm going to bring those up right here. I'm actually going to pull off going to get rid of our overlay here real quick so you guys can see more clearly. Here we go. He did buy a couple full zips. Now, these are pretty, would you say kind of look brand new, correct? Brand new. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Adidas, right? Really nice. So, now this is almost kind of gross because upon going to wash these things, or before going to wash things, he went through the pockets of both of these jackets. And in those pockets, he happened to find some Sabres stationery. And on those pieces of Sabres stationery, he found a to-do list. And then on the backside, notes from a vice president's meeting. Now, and Connor, you can verify this. Like the legwork I did to verify a lot of the stuff on this. And honestly, it's all unless we get a forensic handwritten analysis to come and check these notes out and compare this handwriting to handwriting. We'll never know for sure whose handwriting it is. So I'm not going to definitively say who it is, but but I did start off by saying this is like a Kevyn Adams story because in my opinion, that's his office, right? That he runs the show in there. And the fact that these kind of got out of the office is concerning to me. Again, I'm going to let you all come to your own conclusion on who you think it is, but it's kind of easy to figure out who you think it is. So I'm going to pull up the first side of this note on Sabres stationery. And again, here we go. So to do, call Jarmo, call TMP, call John Szymanski, and call McFarland. So, Hurls, when you see something like that, what are you thinking?
Yeah, that it's Kevyn Adams.
Because who else would be talking to Jarmo? Who would also be talking to TMP, who we would assume at face value, knowing his full name is Terry Michael Pegula. Upon doing research, John Szymanski does have associations with Terry in other ventures outside of hockey. I think maybe even his counsel. I don't know his exact job title. And call McFarland. There are a couple different options there of person who that could have been. Again, we're not going to sit here and say for sure it's Kevyn Adams, but we'll let you come to your own conclusions. Because again, who else could it be? Who's talking to those people? I mean, it's not Terry Pegula writing a note to himself telling him to call himself, right? It's not. I mean, the only other person I could think of, maybe, I'm not even going to say their name. So we get to the backside of this note. Very much different handwriting, but I'd imagine because he's taking these notes in a hurry. VP meeting notes. Culture issue very real. Not a people problem, but a culture problem, internally and externally. VPs function well, but need someone that is present and can act as final decision maker or can get final answer from TMP. Serious communication issues with JR. What do you think when you see something like that, Hurls?
Yeah, someone high up in an organization that is trying to fix it from the top down. That's for sure.
For sure. So now, again, I feel like I really did my due diligence here, and I spoke to people that we all trust to try and find answers. I even went as far as screenshotting, screen grabbing Sabres embedded videos where I found certain examples of handwriting behind his desk and on his desk and in notebooks. And I did notice that there are a lot of similarities and there are some differences for sure. But again, if you aren't going to try and sit here and pick apart each letter and how he writes this or double L's or, how he writes a single L compared to a double L or however you're going to say it, common sense would say whose desk this came from. And here's the thing. So I did reach out to the team to get comment. I did speak to somebody on the phone, and I'm going to keep their name obviously completely anonymous. Because quite frankly, they asked for that, but they did confirm some things for me. They did confirm that TMP was in fact Terry Michael Pegula. They would not confirm whose handwriting this was, even though I felt in the context of the conversation and maybe in the demeanor they gave me that they even knew, but just didn't want to say it on the phone or say it out loud. They would not confirm who McFarland was, but I think when we know who that is compared to when we find out who JR is, because they did confirm that these were notes about John Roth, who I believe was the former COO of the Sabres, correct?
Yeah.
Was let go for having inappropriate workplace relationships or, however it was, not to really dive too deep into that. But having dated, knowing that was probably the time period when he was fired, and calling Jarmo, I think we can date this note to probably right around when they traded for Bowen Byram, because that right around is the same time period when Jarmo was released from Columbus. And McFarland, I believe, is the GM. Again, this is just my belief because I couldn't find another McFarland in the organization, and neither could the people who were kind of assisting us with this. Is the GM of the Colorado Avalanche. So again, I tell this story because I think it's a perfect example, or at least almost, I don't know how you would word it, Hurls, but just like of how this organization has been run over the last 6 years, or even further beyond that. The fact that like something like that would get out of the office, would be donated to a Goodwill. Somebody didn't clean out their pockets. Donate something like that to the Goodwill. Granted, it's not anything groundbreaking or things we didn't already know. Culture issues in the front office or with the VPs, whatever. I don't really think they're talking about the on ice, more or less just obviously what's going in around the office. But the fact that something like that would get out of KeyBank Center and make its way into a Goodwill, which happens to be the closest Goodwill to where the former GM lives. We pulled up a map of all the Goodwills and mapped it all out. Trust me, the fact that that got out and ended up in a fan's hands, and now we're sitting here talking about it. If you were to ask, Hurls, 100 hockey fans, 100 diehard hockey fans who follow the game, and tell them this story and leave out specific details of names and team name, how many of those people do you think would have guessed the Buffalo Sabres?
Maybe 85, maybe more. There are other organizations that have a good amount of discontent and dysfunction, but yeah, I guess we're the poster children for that.
Yeah, call CSI, would you?
No, I was just thinking this is very Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Pepe Sylvia,
the string next to the board.
That's like how it felt, man. And I even joked about this on my show last night, kind of breaking down the Sabres whistleblower, whether he was obviously what he told us was false, but I also think it could have been true at the same time, given the fact that we had no clue that he was signed beyond this season, because we always all assumed that both him and Donnie Granato signed the same exact extension ending at the end of this season. So I guess like the whole point of that podcast last night was, could both things have been true? Could he have in silence signed an extension that, given the situation with Jarmo, maybe it was a gift from Terry Pegula to Kevyn, because I think we can say that it was Terry that hired Jarmo at this point, not Kevyn. I feel pretty confident in saying that, but like, maybe Kevyn didn't want to deal with the pressures of having his replacement breathing over his shoulder while he's trying to navigate the JJ Peterka situation and trading him such a core piece of the team and negotiating an Alex Tuch extension, navigating the draft, all these things, maybe bringing in Jarmo, maybe Kevyn Adams asked for a 1-year extension just so he can feel some reassurance and some comfort while he's navigating this season and not feeling that everything he's doing is under a microscope and that the guy that was hired as a senior advisor is going to be replacing him the second he makes a mistake. So again, that's all just tinfoil hat stuff. But I even said that is because like I felt like that, like the Pepe Sylvia thing. And same thing here. Pepe Sylvia pulling up a map of all of the Goodwills, trying to navigate which one he lived closest to, and calling people within the franchise to confirm all this stuff, and just getting matches, not matches, but trying to find different ways to get samples of his handwriting so we can compare it ourselves. And I did all those things, and you did you helped with those things, and just it was just funny. It was just a really funny and I think even semi-embarrassing thing. And again, if this was indeed Kevyn Adams stationary, which I mean, again, whose else would it be? Very, very on brand for this franchise under that regime.
For sure. But also like could have been like a family member that accidentally donated it without, his consent, or like without his knowledge. Like I do think there is a world where this is just like a funny coincidence, not necessarily this like super, super connected example of a completely, I think there are more concrete examples of a broken organization, 14 years without playoffs. But I think this is, like you kind of said, like a funny coincidence that speaks to, I think the information on the back of that is the most telling example of things that we already knew and that are confirmed. Obviously a culture problem, and especially on the business side, people going in and out, inappropriate relationships, the inability to communicate and make decisions and get things done. Those are things that are representative of a franchise and an organization that has had a lot of trouble, that had a lot of turnover in the past few years. So I think that's the most telling thing about the entire note. How it happened, or the manner in which it happened, I'm sure is a funny story that we're never going to know, but kind of is what it is at this point. And I think we can look back on it and gain some knowledge from it, but also laugh a little bit and then move forward.
My mic was muted. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, no, everything you said is correct. It's like, sure, it definitely could have been. It could have been somebody around the office because they are Adidas jackets. They could not wear Adidas anymore, given the Fanatics, brand change. So it's like maybe somebody around the office, hey, does anybody have jackets they want to donate to Goodwill? We're going to take them down there right now. Granted, that wasn't a sensible Goodwill to take it if it came out of the arena. But again, it could have been a family member, like you said. But at the end of the day, it's just, again, a funny and almost ironic example of the team that is the Buffalo Sabres, I guess. I mean, to some weird metaphor, I don't know. But I do want to give a couple clicks to Frank because he was super excited to find those things. And it was kind of funny because he only sent me all a bunch of pictures of everything. I was like, oh yeah, you did get, it says call Jarmo, call this person. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Whatever. And I was like, I was kind of like half asleep when I read it. And then a few hours later, I was like, oh shit, there's a second side to this note. Oh, wow. There's a lot here talking. And just, again, like you said, just kind of getting to the bottom of that. It was fun. It was just a lot of fun. But we have been sitting on that one for a while. At the end of the day, I did want to give this team and this GM, or former GM now, like their chance to right this team and put them in the right direction. I didn't want to shit on them when it was easier to shit on them. Especially when the space between them and a playoff spot wasn't exactly astronomical. I mean, it just never made sense. Give them their due chance to get to the playoffs. And now that obviously that general manager is gone, and I felt like what better time than now to tell this funny story of a note that we came across at the Goodwill while my friend was thrifting and bought Sabres jackets. So any final thoughts, Hurls?
I am excited to see what this regime is able to accomplish in the next couple months. Even before that, I'm excited to see what this team can accomplish, given everything that's happened this season, that they're technically still in contention and within shouting distance of a playoff spot, specifically from a goaltending perspective, and then also with all the talent that's on the team, obviously. And I think the day-to-day operations are going to be a little bit different, and hopefully some roster decisions and some lineup changes will be a little bit better moving forward. So yeah, I think this was necessary. I think it was expected. It was coming. Now it's here, and here we go. These next 5 games, I think you can look at any stretch of a season within like a 5 to 7 game period, as we just did with the past 6, but they are vitally important for the rest of the year, and we'll see how they do. I think I will be at least 2 of them. Definitely the game on Saturday against the Islanders, and then hopefully the Bruins game a week later, because I will be returning home again on Friday nights on the Red Eye. But yeah, hopefully we can get together and do a show and celebrate the holiday season, and appreciate everybody for tuning in. It's been a fun few weeks.
If we do a live show from Fatty Beer, I know we've talked about doing one from possibly even Extreme Discount Mattress, because they're very hyped up about the partnership we have with them now, and they want to get us actually in one of their centers and actually like do like a full episode from like each of us in one of their beds. Like, I don't know how that would work, but it seemed interesting. And hey, I fully expect maybe a free mattress out of it. No, just kidding. But yeah, definitely, because I mean, Fatty Beer around the holidays, man, the vibes are so cool there. I don't know if you've ever been to a Fatty Beer location.
Yeah, we did one downtown last.
No, I mean like around the holidays though.
Yeah, I think it was around the holidays when we did that. Yeah. Okay.
Well, maybe we'll get to the Lancaster location or the downtown location, because they do the 24 beers of Christmas. They have so many cool drink specials. I mean, the food is fantastic, especially given their menu. Like you wouldn't expect the food to be as good as it is, but it's really good. And we'll see. I see that you mentioned you'll go to games. Maybe you'll do a pregame show or a postgame show from Fatty Beer. I'm excited to have you back in town and actually, do a podcast together. Finally, it's been too long.
Yeah, likewise. Let's get after it.
Okay, so with that being said, guys, if you've enjoyed this content, please make sure you're subscribed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on Twitter or Facebook, please make sure you're following along. You find me at DuaneS39 on Instagram, Twitter, Duane Steinell on Facebook. You can find my co-host at CHurls13 on Instagram, Twitter. I'm sure Connor Hurley on Facebook. And then, of course, on YouTube, if you are watching on YouTube, as I'm going to challenge you all to do right now, please hit the like button right now. Make sure you hit the bell icon so you're subscribed so you know when we go live. And make sure you're subscribed just in general so you can, follow along throughout the season. And I appreciate all the support. Tons of comments here in the peanut gallery. Always appreciate it. And as always, go Sabres. We'll probably talk to you Thursday night. Who are they playing Thursday night, Hurls?
Flyers.
Okay. Should be exciting. We'll talk to you then.